Hello everyone, welcome back to week 5 to our final part, which is data manipulations, right? Before this, we have learned about know your data. Now we are in our second phase, which is about data manipulation, which is a little bit more trickier than the first one. Alright, so the first one is quite easy. It's just like you try to inspect the data, right? Knowing how many columns are there, how many rows are there, what are the first two data looks like, what are the last two data looks like, and etc. Right? But this one is different. This one is you transform the data, right? So it's going to be a lot difference. Now, most of the things that we are learning here, which is filter and then select and then if underscore ask, mutate, group by, everything we are going to learn is basically we are using dplyers, right? So just keep in mind, before you start with the whole thing, you need to install .packages dplyr if you haven't installed, right? So and then you need to load, and then you need to load dplyers, right? So something like this. Okay, but since I have installed, so I'll just like delete this one. I'll just like load dplyr only. All right, so is it like this? Let me just check. Let me just like runtime. Oh, sorry, it's not load dplyr, it's library dplyr. Alright, so before we start, we need to library dplyr first, then only we can what? We can start with our process. Alright, so we are going to use the similar data set, I guess. So we are just going to use flights is equivalent to read.csv, and then the file name, in this case file name is week5 underscore tutorial underscore flights.csv. Alright, now let's start with doing things first. Alright, so the very first thing is we are learning how to do filtering. So what is filtering? Filtering is basically, let's say we have this data, right? We have this data. Let me just make it head flights 5. Alright, listing the first 5 data. Let's say we only want from this data, right? We only want data from carrier B6. Alright, carrier B6 only. So how can we do it? Is we can do it by filter. Alright, so this one is different. This one is using different data because we don't have region over here, right? We don't have region. Okay, so what happened is, let me just try to explain first. In this case, what happened is this one is filter, right? And then we have all underscore data. All underscore data is the data frame name, and then we have the condition over here. So that is how the syntax is. So let's say if I want carrier B6 only, right? What should I do is maybe I just like make one simple variable, which is carrier B6, something like this, right? This one can be any names. It's really up to you because this one is variable name. It's equivalent to filter. Alright, filter. Remember, this one accept two things. The first one is your data frame, and the second one is your conditions, right? So let's say I wanted to, the first one is my data frame, which is flights. I want you to actually know this one, flights and flights. All right, and then the second condition is carrier is equivalent to B6, right? Now if I print this one, carrier B6, what's going to be happen is I am going to get the data. All right, let me just make it head carrier B6 10. All right, so the only data I have here, everything is carrier B6, if you realize. Alright, so that is what filter is. Basically, it is for filtering which which criteria that you want. Alright, in this case, in this example here, it wanted to filter to region is equivalent to east, right? So the north is going to be deleted, and it's going to display only the one with the east. So that is how it works. Now the second one, alright, okay, never mind. Let's go to this one first. Now it's not only equal. It can be quantity as well. It can be numeric, which is can be more than or equal than, and it can be two condition as well, right? So this is example of two conditions. So let's say I wanted to make two conditions, right? From this basis, I want it to be n, and I want it to be depth underscore delay. No, not depth underscore delay. The airtime less than 50. Alright, so what we can see here, right now we have airtime more than 50, right? If I run this one, what happened is all of the airtime is less than 50, if you notice here, right? So that is how, and this symbol looks like which is less than or equals less than, right? If I put less than or equals then, maybe we are going to have some 50s, like this one, right? So that is how this thing work. And then this one is either one thing is true. If n, right, it need to be carrier, it need to be b6, and at the same time air underscore time need to be less than or equal to 50. If I put or, this one is or, if I put or, what's going to be happen is we can have other than b6. So example, we can have AA, but we need to be airtime less than 50, something like this, right? And at the same time, it can be B6, but the airtime can be more than 50, more or equivalent to 50 also can, like this one also can. So if I'm using or, meaning that I only need to fulfill one of the criteria, but if I'm using and, like this, meaning that I need to fulfill both of the criteria. So in this case, if I use and, right, every row is carrier is B6 and the airtime is less than or equal to 50. So that is how it works. Now let's go to the next thing. All right, the next thing is we are going to learn about select. Before this, we learn about filter, right? Now we are going to learn about select. So what select does is basically it choose which column they wanted to stay. Before this, right, filter, right, it choose which row they wanted to keep, which is row with the region is and etc, right? This one is which column they wanted to display. So how can we do that is basically, let's just try to make it subset data. Normally that is what we call subset data is equivalent to select, right? The first one is your data frame. Your data frame again was flights, right? Flights. And then now what column do you want it to be? So in this case, I only want month and day. Let's just make it like this. And then if I print subset data, what happened is I only display these two things only, month and day. So that is what select is. All right, it is quite straightforward. Now the next thing is about arrange. So what is arrange? Arrange is basically how can we display data in sorting order. Doesn't really matter if the sorting is ascending or descending. Alright, so the syntax is basically you just use arrange function, and then the first one is your data frame name, and lastly is descending, which stand for which is stand for descending, and quantity stand for which column you wanted it to be descending. Now let's say if I wanted to let's see how is our flight data right now. Flights right now, right? So this is our flights data, right? Let me just print the first 10. I think it's a lot more clearer. Flights stands, right? So let's say if I want it to be arranged air underscore times, right, to be descending order, how can I make it something like this? Air time, which is air time data frame, and then equivalent to, okay, this one is custom, doesn't really have to be air underscore time data frame, it can be any names. So I want it to be sort based on air underscore time. We'll just make it arrange over here, and the first one is our data frame name, which is flights, and the second one is dash, and our column that we want is air underscore time. Right, now if I print this one, head air underscore time data frame, what I'm going to get is I'm going to get the data. And if we look at the data frame over here, okay, maybe you cannot see here, maybe let's make it 20, right? So if we look at the data air underscore time, the data is actually sorted based on descending order for air underscore time. It started from 340 and then eventually go to 337. Alright, so that is how arrange work, which is for sorting order.